Welcome to the Apartment Guys, where we dive deep into all things multifamily investing. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower real estate investors to reach their highest potential. Each week, host Tate Seamer interviews high-level guests from all over the industry who are sure to bring valuable, actionable ideas that will propel your career to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned investor, you are in the right place. And now your host, the Apartment Guy, Tate Seamer.
Welcome everybody back. Another episode of the Apartment Guys podcast coming at you. And it is broker week on the Apartment Guys. We're really excited to get to talk to a broker, like a real live, you can like go meet them in Oklahoma City broker. Mr. David Dirkschneider is with us. And David is like I said, he's a broker in the Oklahoma City market, does a lot of volume there, and is going to have a lot of great wisdom and knowledge for us in the way of, specific market knowledge, but more broadly kind of broker relations. And I've got lots of questions and things I want to talk to you about, David. So first of all, welcome to the show. It's really good to have you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you inviting me on and looking forward to this. So, but yeah, again, thank you. It's a beautiful day for us to do it, and stuck inside. Finally, after having a bunch of freezing weather, we've got some 70-degree days. So it's a good start.
Yep. So David's coming to us from Edmond, Oklahoma, and I'm in Salt Lake City today. I woke up in Columbus, Ohio this morning, but made it back on an early morning flight. And I was there looking at a new deal that we're under highest and best offer for. So we're very much in the broker space right now. I'm dealing with brokers all day, every day in Columbus, and working on new deals there. And of course, always working on our pipeline in Oklahoma City. As many of the listeners know, those are our two primary markets: Columbus, Central Ohio, the Columbus and tertiary markets around Columbus, and also the Oklahoma City markets. And we're very interested in Tulsa. We don't own in Tulsa yet, but we're very interested in Tulsa. So David, it's awesome to have you. For the listeners that don't know anything about you, give us kind of a background on you and where you're from. You have a little bit of an Oklahoma accent, if I'm not mistaken. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So, so for the most part, I'm born and raised in Oklahoma City. Spent majority of my life here. I spent a little bit of time away in the Marine Corps, and so lived in California and then Iraq for a year. And but otherwise here, and when I had a family, decided to come back here, and it's where all my family is. And so just wanted to call it our permanent home. And so it's helped me in this business, just because I literally, there's not a property in this market that haven't either sold, managed, or somehow had some sort of connection with, because I've lived here all my life. And so it's a good background.
Yeah, your wealth of knowledge, and you're not even a very old dude. You're what I'd put you at late 30s.
Close, yeah, early 40s. I think I'm
there. You go. Okay.
42, something like that.
Okay.
I kind of lose track.
So yeah, about it. Those of you watching on YouTube, you'll see why. David's a young looking guy. First of all, thanks for your service. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I can't ever overlook that. So talk to us a little bit about how you got into real estate and how you got into this commercial multifamily space.
Yeah, no, it's a kind of an interesting story. So, after I got off, I was in active duty and then the reserves in the Marine Corps. So after I got off active duty, I was looking for a job, and I went into the Marines to help pay for school. And so I was actually still in school, and I was doing some mortgages. And that was when I was in California during the height of the mortgage market. People remember negative AM, interest only, adjustable rate loans, things that you look back and you would say, well, that's why the market crashed. But was doing that stuff. And then that's when I moved back.
07, somewhere in there.
That was actually 04, 05.
Okay.
And then
got it.
in 2000, I think it was 2005, moved back to Oklahoma City and needed to find a job. And I thought, well, I'll kind of do the same thing. But I looked in the paper and I saw an ad that said a recent college grad for apartment management. And I thought, that's interesting. I don't know. I mean, there was a guy that I was working with doing mortgages in California that he only did apartments. And I thought, man, he was always doing really well. And I thought, that's interesting. I'll look into that. So I went and interviewed for that and got hired on to who was at the time one of the largest apartment owners in Oklahoma. He's just a private individual, has his own company, owned a portfolio of apartments throughout Oklahoma, Kansas. He hired me on as kind of a regional manager. And so he trained me to oversee his properties, and eventually within a short period of time grew to be the general manager of his company. And so I learned everything there was about apartments, from acquisition, to, due diligence, the day-to-day operations, learned how to oversee renovations, just the daily management, and then how to prepare them to sell them in the end. So literally the whole process. And then while I was selling properties, I'd always see the settlement statements and I would see the commission on the settlement statements. And I thought, man, these guys are making more on one deal and I'm making all year long. Yeah. So I thought I'm just sitting the wrong side of this business. And so, so I went with the blessing of that owner, decided to get my brokerage license, and which actually had it in California because you had to have that to do mortgages. And so I transferred it to Oklahoma, and one of the first, larger apartments I sold, or 100 plus units I sold, was for the guy that originally I worked for. And so left on good terms, started doing the brokerage. And then that was in, I think, 2007, about, I think, and then have done it ever since. And so I look back, it was a scary thing to jump from, a stable salary job to, who knows, kill what you eat kind of job. And, but I look back at it as the best thing I've ever done, because I love this business. I tell people all the time that I'm blessed because I don't feel like I have to work. I enjoy doing what I do and working with the people that I get to work with. And I think it shows with how I do business is, I just truly engulf myself in the apartment market and love it.
Yeah, it does show. I mean, it just shows in the way you talk about it. And when what a blessing in life, just in general, like high five to you to be able to say that you love what you do for work. Like, so many people dream of getting to that. And I'm there too. And I just love what I do. I was on the phone yesterday with our attorney and telling him about my travel schedule and having to be up at 4 a.m. in Ohio, which is 2 a.m. in Utah. And like, he's like, man, that sounds like a lot of work. And I honestly, like, for me, it's kind of thrilling, to be real. Yeah. Like, it just kind of out chasing business and playing this fun, wonderful game that we get to play in business. And it is exciting. Yeah. Well said. And
structuring deals, putting them together, and the excitement of, will they work? And then even the letdown or defeat when they don't work, it's all part of that. I don't know, that excitement, right? And then that way, you appreciate the ones you do get when they come through, because all the work went, on all the other ones. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. We just lost on a highest and best in OKC on a 251 unit deal. And you probably know it well. And we just barely lost out on it, apparently. And yeah, it's disappointing. And it's like you said, it kind of makes the victories even more appreciated and sweeter, given the current environment. Getting a good pencilable deal, getting it under contract and getting it to the finish line is a victory right now. And as everybody that's listening knows, there's a lot of liquidity, there's a lot of capital out there, and there's a lot of chasing a lot of yield, and there aren't nearly as many of these deals and inventory that that we'd like to see. David, you and I were talking before we started recording about what your people call you and say, what do you have? And right now there's not a lot to show them, right?
Yeah, it's that, you would think that, you have a bunch of deals on the market at any given time, but, right now the average time that a property is lasting on the market is a week to 2 weeks. unless a seller specifically says, I want to run the process. And so, somebody may call and say, hey, I saw last week you sent out XYZ apartments. Can you tell me a little bit about it? You say, well, I'm sorry, it's already under contract. And I mean, it's just that time that if you see something you like, you got to jump all in, right away, because before you blink, it may be gone. And I think somebody had told me, and I hadn't researched it, but there was 50 billion in equity chasing deals right now. And it's just, that's just an insane number to think about. That's just equity, not transaction volume. But so there's a lot of money out there, and it's extremely competitive, and that's, I think, one of the hard things for people to really position themselves to win the deal. It's not always price, but just getting out there and except putting yourself in the best position.
Yeah. And let me tell you, it's not always price. And a lot of times now it's coming down to earnest money, and particularly non-refundable earnest money. I'm just saying, we're working on another Ohio deal, a big one, close to 400 units. And we're up against another offer that offered well over 7 figures in hard earnest money on day 7. So
I believe it.
Yeah, it's hard to compete with.
It is, and or at least any deal that I was the lead on, I haven't put a property under contract in the last 12 months that didn't have true hard money day one. Where no inspections, obviously it's contingent on environmental and title, but they got to be able to deliver the property to you. But other than that, true hard money, and a lot of them 7 figures, and it's hard to comprehend that level of aggressiveness in offers. But the reality is it's market. And if you don't do it, then you're not going to get the deal. And so sellers will take sometimes lower price. If it's, if somebody's putting up hard money, it's certainty of closing.
Right. Which is key right now. Although I will say, as things continue to move on, we're recording this in early March of 2022. Things are still going pretty dang well for apartment building owners. And as far as cap rates are still tightening. At least they're staying as tight as they ever were. Interest rates are still staying pretty low comparatively.
So historically.
Yeah. So it's still, it's not a bad time to, I'm just saying hypothetically, if a seller loses a month or 2 or 3 by being in bed with a buyer that doesn't perform, it's not the end of the world probably for that seller.
No, that's very true.
But at the same time, they've got a business plan, they've got partners, they've got investors likely that are counting on them and on this closing at a certain time. So I get it. And for us on the buyer side, it's quite a game that we've learned to play. We have our lender ready to rock with pre-approval letters on just about any property that we come to them with. So, and they'll underwrite it and do their own due diligence on it quickly. And so we're able to present those, and we're certainly not afraid to jump on a plane literally in the matter of a day or 2 days, and which is what I just did on this Columbus trip. And hopefully, David, you tell me, but what a big part of why I do that and why my partners do that as well with me is it builds a relationship, and it builds the trust between us as buyers and you as a broker, and hopefully representing a seller, that we say what we're going to do, and we show up when we say we're going to show up, and we're not afraid to spend a few grand on a quick due diligence trip if we have to make sure that it's a deal we want.
Well, and that speaks volumes. And I think, at the end of the day, this is a relationship business, and, what you say means a lot. And, I have that, I'll have calls from potential buyers sometimes, and, they'll make an offer on a property, and, very, very rarely will we enter into a contract if they haven't put eyes on. And it's always a red flag if someone says, well, I won't fly out there until I have a signed deal. And it's like, so you're saying, $20 million property is not worth a $500 plane ticket just to have the chance at it. I mean, something's off there if they're not willing to do that. And the fact that if they're not willing to look at a property before they, commit to signing a contract, they're probably not that serious. So I think that, that makes that's definitely what you want to do. And then back to just the relationship business, it doesn't matter. The access to owner's information is everywhere, right? I mean, there's more owner, direct owner to buyer to seller transactions now than there ever really has been. Because of that, because you got, Yardi, CoStar, and all these different, softwares that have, contact information. But the reality is brokers they continuously have those relationships with owners and with sellers and with buyers and are able to put deals together. And so I think you going out there and looking at the property, meeting with the brokers in your market, all that's going to do is just help, deepen that relationship and your priority to get deals. Because, if you're constantly in front of broker A and in Cincy or Columbus and he, is used to seeing you there, you guys go to lunch, you've built a relationship, you have a friendship. Who do you think they're going to send the deals to first? Right. You or some guy that says he'll come out there, once he has a signed deal. I think it's, the answer to that one.
Right. Right. And then look, it snowballs because at this point we own property in both markets. So we have every bit, all that more of a reason to be in our markets frequently. And asset management is a very real thing, and managing our property managers is something that we put a lot of focus and intention on. So, there's always a good reason to jump on a plane in our business. If nothing else, just checking in on,
just put eyes on. Exactly.
So let me just kind of highlight or zoom in on something you just said. So I'm sure you're getting more and more buyer calls by the month these days, or have been through COVID. I mean, has that been a trend through COVID, or like how long has that been going on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously during the very peak or beginning of COVID, things kind of went quiet and it was a nice, couple month vacation, but it didn't take too long after that. Then phone calls started picking back up. But I think since, really, I would call it early to mid 2021, there was just a trajectory of activity and interest that has gone up and just doesn't seem to slow down. I'm not joking when I say I probably get 30 plus calls a day, just from somebody that's looking to buy, new to market, kicking the tires. And then the reality is, I'd say more than half of them, or probably even 80% of them, are, kicking the tires more than, really able to do something. But you can't judge a book by its cover. You got to treat them all equally and play them out and see, what turns into something. But there's definitely no shortage of buyers out there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a ton of liquidity chasing deals.
Right. It's kind of like us with quite frankly, with lenders, with debt. There's like so much of that out there, and we have no problem qualifying for that. So like, that's when people bring us a new debt source, it's like, okay, like, you seem awesome and love to work with you.
Yeah. What are you going to do to stand out?
Yeah. And right now for us, what you can do to stand out is also source us some equity.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
That's something that we are kind of looking for, because, the more sources of that you have, the more levers you can pull and more triggers you can pull, and the quicker we can build our balance sheet. So, that's kind of what we're all about. So 30 plus calls a day.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I tell people sometimes that and they think, oh, no way. And I show them my phone, and I'm not joking. Look at,
that's amazing.
It just constantly is ringing. And we've seen an influx of, buyers from, I call it the Northeast part of the US. We'll get buyers from all over, don't get me wrong. And historically Oklahoma's had a large percentage of ownership out. The owners that are outside of Oklahoma have historically been California more than any other state.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing a big shift to the East Coast, and a lot of, really what it boils down to, and it's no secret, is there's a lot of rent restrictions and regulations in a lot of those Northeast and other coastal markets. And so they look at places like Oklahoma, Arkansas, Ohio, these Midwest markets that, that are, red states that aren't going to put in the rent restrictions, and that are business friendly, that are going to allow you to evict people if they don't pay rent. And that's what people are attracted to. And the yields have been higher than in those markets. I mean, yields are getting compressed, but it's still overall a more friendly investment market than some of the others.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you real quick, side note, Northwest Arkansas, how close is that to Oklahoma City? And is that a market that you work in?
Yeah, no, we definitely do. It's, I mean, depending on what part of Northwest Arkansas, I mean, it's within a couple hours. Yeah. And so generally how kind of most of our capstone offices work is if you can drive there and back the same day, then we'll cover that area. So we have our team specifically has the office in Oklahoma City and one in Tulsa. And then out of that team, there's 4 brokers. And then obviously we have analysts and assistant support staff and all that. But of those 4 brokers, the markets that we primarily cover are all of Oklahoma, all of Arkansas, Southwest Missouri, and Southern Kansas. So like in Kansas, it's more like the Wichita, Hutchinson's area. And then Missouri, it's kind of Springfield, Joplin, but then all of Arkansas. And Arkansas, is I'd say I've called it a hidden jewel, but it's not really so hidden anymore. I mean, a lot of people are really, knowing about it, and it's really gaining interest over the last, call it 6 to 12 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's something that's interesting to us because we're kind of in the path of, it's kind of a path of progress play for us in terms of, it's near what our other assets that we're growing in our portfolio, and we could leverage our operations in a market that close. So Tulsa is the same story. So we'll have to talk a little bit more, maybe off the air, about some of the other markets that you mentioned, Wichita, Springfield. I'm interested in that whole neck of the woods for the same reasons that we really like Oklahoma City. Like it's just kind of a money location for investing in value add existing Class C type property.
Yeah, they're stable. I mean, what I always explained this part of the country is until last year. I mean, last year we had record rent growth, but previously the past 28 years we averaged 3.14% in rent growth. And so, and why I say 28 years, because it was 28 years ago, or actually 29 years ago now, that was the last time the Oklahoma City area had negative rent growth. And so if you think of that, I mean, do you know any other market that's gone almost 30 years without having negative rent growth year over year? I don't know of any. Right. And so what I always say is this is kind of the 401k of your portfolio, right? You're not going to buy a property and get just a 30% appreciation, in a year for doing nothing. I mean, you easily can if you go in and implement some value add strategies, but just for doing nothing, you're not going to do that. But what you can do is you can buy it, and if you just maintain it and do well year after year after year, you're going to get that 3 to 5% appreciation, for doing nothing. Yeah. But which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's not going to go down, right? I mean, it's historically speaking, it's not going to go down. It's just continue to go up. Then you layer in some of that value add or different things that you can do to increase that, and it'll just accelerate that. But so it's why I say, the bigger markets where you can hit 30%, appreciation, if you time it wrong, you can also lose 30%. So that's why I say Oklahoma City, this kind of, plains, market, Midwest plains area, is that just, slow and steady, and it wins the race.
Yep. I wonder if they're talking about Columbus now as being close to kind of having what they're calling its Nashville moment. And, for those of you that don't know what's going on in Nashville, it's absolutely exploding. And it's gone from a small, sleepy, almost not a tertiary market, but certainly not even a secondary market, to being a booming
primary,
almost primary type market. And they're talking about Columbus being kind of poised to have something like that happen to it. And it seems to me like what happens when a market goes through that is that you see this coastal money coming in from the New York, Boston type areas and Californias, and all of a sudden their cost of money is so much less than the mom and pop investor, the boutique level investor, and they can come in and pay a point lower in a cap rate scenario, and start to really force pricing up. And I think the Texas markets have seen this. San Antonio's seen it because Austin's just gone absolutely batty. And Dallas has seen this. Dallas cap rates are in the high threes in some places for Class A and mid threes. And so it just makes me wonder, you're starting to sniff out some coastal money coming in. It sounds like, those buyers are starting to show up in Oklahoma. And it makes me wonder if it's going to have its moment as well at some point where cap rates all of a sudden drop. And who knows, with interest rates going up potentially and all that factored in, who knows what'll happen, but it's fun to think about.
Yeah. And it's, and that's the interesting impact. I mean, or the interesting, kind of view on it is, what are cap rates going to do? I mean, because it's clearly interest rates have started going up, but historically they're still really low.
Yeah.
And, I think anybody that's gotten the business in the last 10 years, they don't realize that, I mean, these are really low interest rates.
That's right.
Even if they went up 100 basis points, they're still really low interest rates. But when you get cap rates that are, really reaching at or below that interest rate, you start having negative leverage. And at some point that's got to have an impact on cap rates. I mean, So far we haven't seen it. I mean, we put a deal under contract recently that does have negative leverage. But it really didn't deter the interest. Now, granted, it has, there's some value add potential that will increase that year 2 cap rate or, year 3 average, but it's still, it's interesting to see that somebody is willing to pay, cap rate below what their interest rate is. And how long can that last?
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, I've been doing this for, 18 years or so. And it's just, we're in such an anomaly market where nothing has been the way it is now. It's really hard to know where it's going to go. And anybody that says they know, they're not telling the truth. It's just a guess, because it's anybody's guess right now.
No,
I know there's demands there.
Absolutely. Yeah. You couldn't be more accurate. I mean, the smartest guys in the room got it wrong with COVID, and smartest gals in the room as well. Everybody thought that it was the end of the economy, that we were due for a correction anyway, right? We were already like 3, 4, 5 years overdue for a 7-year correction cycle. And people said, here we are with a red, what's the red herring event? Is that the word I'm looking at?
Black Swan.
Black Swan. Thank you.
Close.
I knew it was a colored animal. So yeah, a Black Swan event like COVID, and everybody thought that cap rates would go way up, that, there would be no funding. There'd be that the debt programs would go away, like what happened in 08, 07, that time frame. And not only did everybody get that wrong, but we had the best year ever in multifamily by just about any way that you cut the cake up. Like it was the highest volume year, the lowest cap rate year. It just on and on and on. The key metrics were record setting post COVID in the commercial multifamily space. And, I think Oklahoma City is one of those. Well, we love it. I go out and talk about it because I think, number one, there's a ton of opportunity there. There's a lot of inventory. Yeah, deals are tough to find right now everywhere, and including Oklahoma City. But relatively speaking,
you can find them.
Yeah, exactly. And relatively speaking, there is a lot of inventory there of existing stuff that needs TLC and needs good management. And you were talking earlier, David, about how really you just go in. A lot of times it's really just doing a good job of managing an asset. You need to put in some capital here and there, and sometimes you need to put in a lot of capital, but management.
Yeah, a lot of times the biggest value add is just operations.
Yeah.
I mean, you see that so often that somebody, I mean, they're sitting on a great property, but they don't run it as such. I'd say the number one thing that we see people do wrong is, they buy a property and then they sit back and just drain it of its cash. They don't think they have to reinvest into it or keep things up. And, I've seen buyers literally before go to closing and to their management company's like, okay, hey, will you let's put the security deposits and a month of reserves back in the account. They're like, well, no, just operate it off of what comes in. And it's like, really? I mean,
yeah, no.
You expect it to run like that? I mean, you're behind the eight ball if you're doing that. And
right.
They're always trying to play catch up. And so I think with just the proper operations, that alone, can turn a lot of properties around.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what an amazing, just to kind of circle back all the way back to the beginning, on what an amazing value your experience as regional manager and then GM of one of the biggest apartment companies in Oklahoma City at the time, like your experience with acquisitions, due diligence, operations, management, like that whole side of things, to bring that into the broker aspect of things is just, it's massively valuable, like at least from where I'm sitting as a buyer and somebody that would love to do a deal with you and work with you, like having that level of expertise and that perspective, because the pain of undercapitalizing a project. And we do too. Mm-hmm. Like we've been there. We have, on 2 of our 7 deals, we missed the mark on how much we needed to raise. And, as an honest mistakes, kind of not knowing what you didn't know. And it happens and stuff comes up that you don't foresee and whatnot, but it's not fun. It's, it adds a whole layer of stress and worry and a big to-do list of having to go out and figure, problem solve this thing, whether that's raise capital or whatever that it takes to solve it.
Yeah, which you always hate to do, after the fact, but no, it definitely has. It's, having that experience has really allowed me to really add more value to my clients, and really see, things that otherwise other brokers may not have seen, or, figure out how to add value. And I mean, I know, especially starting off just with that experience, I mean, having that, knowing that language and how to talk, or feel the same pains that owner operators feel, because I've been there, makes a big difference. And knowing, hey, you really got to look out for this or that, that and I would say this is with my team, not trying to give a commercial, but, collectively we've sold over 100,000 units. And so there's not very many properties in Oklahoma that we haven't either sold, managed, or had some sort of interaction with. And so a lot of times I'm able to, if I'm working with with the buyer, I'm able to show them things that maybe otherwise they wouldn't know. And I'll give you a real life example that added value. A guy was going to buy a property, and it was a 3-story building, but the first floor was partially underground. And so, everybody knows those, sometimes have, some issues and they could leak. But I knew very specifically of one building that year after year had flooded and had sewer backups and all kinds of problems, which wasn't a big, I say it wasn't a big, it was a big deal, but because I knew about it and I could tell them about it and said, hey, they're not going to tell you this, but here's what's wrong. I know from my experience on this building, he was able to set aside money to take care of that problem. And after he closed, what happened? Of course, it flooded, it had backups, but he knew that going in. And so he capitalized for that, and he was able to solve that problem. Had he not known that, would have been a really big issue that he would have then had to go back and either raise more money or figure something out. And so, things like that, I think, my clients have been able to realize, hey, that adds value and that helps. And I think that's just where, local market knowledge and boots on the ground really help.
Yeah, for sure. When you see, you see all these properties from a high level, and you see a lot of them. So you see successful properties and you see properties that struggle, and you see properties that are just utter failures. what would you say are the differentiators between the successful ones and the ones that are like kind of barely holding on, struggling to get by kind of thing?
Yeah. I think one thing is something that some people would think is common sense, but it's not. And that's, your on-site staff. You see a lot of people, especially on Class C assets, it's more common than, a Class A or B, but people, they want to hire the cheapest labor that they can find. They want to squeeze everybody as tight as they can. If a property maybe needs 3 maintenance people, they really try to say, well, can I get by with just 2? Trying to squeeze pennies out of a property is only going to cost you dollars in the long run. And so I think if you hire a good staff that knows what they're doing, that enjoys working. I mean, look, I get it. It's, on the management or maintenance side, it may not be their dream job, but you can still make them where they enjoy their job. They can be well compensated. They can be taken care of. They can be appreciated. I think that's probably one of the bigger things too, is letting them know that they're appreciated. Yeah. And that right there, I mean, if you think about it, they are the front line of your clients, and your clients are the tenants, right? They're the front line of what they see. If that tenant comes into the office, to pay rent or to talk about an issue that they're having, and that manager in there is grumpy, and then they send the maintenance guy out there and he walks in smelling like he just smoked a pack of cigarettes, and, in every experience they have is negative, are they going to want to stay? No, they're going to maybe fulfill their lease and then they're going to be gone. But if you can make it to where their experience is better, if they enjoy living there, and maybe there's community activities, or there's friends that they have, or they should say live in the property, but people that they've made friends with in the property, they're less likely to want to leave. And so if you can do those little things and control your turnover, I think, everybody worries about pushing rents and everybody worries about cutting expenses, and all those things matter. But if you can control your turnover, then you're going to make more money in the long run. You're not going to have empty units that are losing money, and then you're not going to have to make those units ready, and pay for them. And if to do that, all you got to do is spend an extra $2 in payroll for your maintenance guy, an extra, $500 a month for your manager, or maybe giving them a bonus once a year. I mean, just whatever it is that they need, that's worth it. And so I'd say that's probably the most common thing I see is people just under appreciating the impact that the proper staff has on their property.
Yeah. All kinds. I've been nodding my head this whole time you were talking about that. I'm a huge believer in investing in your human resources in business in general. But look, these are the people that interact with your tenants directly, and they determine the success of your property. And they're incredibly valuable. They're the tip of the spear and of your business plan. And so,
and don't shortchange it. Don't cheap out on it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's good stuff. So, let me just switch gears. We're starting to run out of time a little bit, but I got to ask you a few questions along the lines of, with 30 calls a day and very little inventory, very little, to offer folks. How does, I know a lot of my listeners are wondering about great broker relations, how to establish a good connection with a broker, and things to avoid, and things to embrace when kind of getting to know a broker in a particular market.
Sure. So I'll tell you one thing. It's a plug for a book. It's not mine, so I don't make anything off of it. But a great book that anybody that's looking to buy apartments, especially if you're on the acquisition side or working with brokers, is Apartment Investors Who Dominate by Bo Berry. And so he's not even with my company. So I mean, but he's a really good broker, good guy. He wrote this book, and he talks about in the book elite investors, right? And so elite investors are those that they're not always the biggest companies or the strongest performers, but for some reason, year after year, they always seem to get the good deals, right? So they just you're always looking at them, you're like, how did they get away with that deal, or how come they got that deal? Why can't I get those deals? And what it boils down to is usually those elite investors are people that they're fun to work with. They're likable people. They're trustworthy. They're honest. Those are the type of people that usually get the deals. And it's just like, anything. The golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated. If you call on brokers and you treat them with respect and treat them, like just good people, and become friends with them, get to know them, you're going to get deals more than somebody that calls and talks down to them or tries to tell them, what they're doing wrong, or, they're ridiculous if they think they can get that price, or, you want to get on the good side of brokers, because like I said earlier, even though there's more direct transactions than there ever have been, I don't care how long we go, how many years in the future, brokers are still going to control the majority of the deals that transact every year. Just because those large investors out there, they know, hey, the brokers are going to be my bloodline. And I'm not saying that because I'm a broker. I'm just saying it because it's just the reality that they're going to, is it worth going around their back to save, a few percent, or is it worth treating them right and having them make you the top priority when they find a deal? It's money well spent. I believe that myself. And while I don't, own any apartments outright, I do invest in some. I don't ever want to be a competition to my clients, and so I'll invest just in other deals in other areas. And I say that all the time. I'm like, don't try to go around the broker. Don't, if you want, pay the broker a fee on top of it. Say, look, you bring me deals, I'll give you a bonus. Anything you can do to get more volume sent your way, I think is what you should be doing. And that book explains a lot of that. Of why certain people continue to get deals. And I think, beyond that, just we talked about it earlier. The stronger you can present yourself, when you're in a best and final process, or you're putting forth an offer, at the end of the day, dollar matters, but it goes a lot further beyond that. What are your terms? How do they feel in your ability to close? Present them with, don't just send over an LOI, send them over an LOI and, some references, and hey, here's properties that we own, and here's some recent transactions, something that gives that broker, ammunition to go to the seller and say, hey, here's their offer, and here's why they're a good buyer for this property. And I think if you take that extra time, that extra diligence, then you'll end up winning a lot more deals.
Wow. That's good stuff there, guys. Nuggets from the broker himself. Your perspective's so valuable, and that's money. So Apartment Investors Who Dominate is the book. We'll put that in the show notes. Bo Berry, Beau Berry.
Yeah, Beau. Actually, I believe in it so much. I bought several of the books that I'll give them as gifts, and I'll send you one.
Great. That's great.
It's Beau Bery. I don't make any money off that, so I'm not plugging it for that. It's just,
okay, cool.
I just truly believe that it's a good book.
Yep. No, I'm stoked to dig into that. That's and like, think about listeners, think about that. Like, think about yourself as an elite investor. Like, what's it going to take for you to get from kind of where you are now, which is great, to being an elite investor that is somebody that a high-end broker like David is going to call you in the event that they get a really great off-market deal, pocket listing sort of situation where a seller doesn't necessarily want to go to full market and they need a good buyer. Like, that's when some really great opportunities can come up, and you got to stand out, and you got to have the trust of the broker to stand out in that case. And I'll say this, it may seem kind of obvious, but the value of showing up in the market and meeting in person, whether it's coffee, lunch, dinner, preferably property tours, like that's where I like to spend my time with brokers, if possible, is actually looking at properties and doing business. But actually showing up and doing that, listeners, like, there is you can't put a price tag on that, because it's going to lead
staying in front
to
of
something good. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And
I mean,
and
it's a,
follow up.
As a broker, we have, our, prospect calling that we have to do, and owners that we call on, and, following up with them. But, if I were, sourcing acquisitions as an investor, or I was an acquisitions person, I think I would have a list of brokers, and I would be calling them and following up with them and making sure, a month doesn't go by that I don't touch base, and, sending them emails and just being in front of them, because at the end of the day, you want them to think about you when the next deal comes up. And I hate to say it, but with 30 calls a day, if somebody calls me one time and I don't hear from them for 6 months, I mean, unless they did something that really just made me remember them, I'm probably not going to. Yeah. And so, there's a lot to that follow through. And then finally, doing what you say, when you get a deal, man, you got to perform. You got to perform smoothly.
Yep. Because, if the consequences of doing so are huge, in that it leads to future business with maybe that particular broker or other brokers. Like when you close a big deal, people hear about it, and you're on the map. Sees it. And we get calls from people that are getting ready to list a property, and they know that we just purchased in Oklahoma City or Columbus, and they want to run it by us. Like that's something that's real. So doing what you say you're going to do at all levels in this business is so essential. And getting the deals to the finish line that you put under contract is a big part of that. One of the most important, I'd say. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the most important. Well, good stuff, David. Anything else you can think of for listeners that are kind of looking at themselves maybe as kind of smaller time investors, or more like boutique level investors that are trying to get to that elite level? Any other words of wisdom for them?
No, I mean, other than I just think, use common sense. I mean, think about it. If you were on, I always like to say, put the other person's, put my feet in their shoes and see, what would I expect, or what would I want? And a lot of times when you truly sit there and just kind of pause and make that happen, you look at things in a different perspective. And there's nothing special about people that own, 20,000 units versus somebody that owns 10 units. Those people they worked hard to get there. They took baby steps. They made the right relationships, and anybody can get there, right? It's just a matter of, continue to do those things that you need to do on a daily basis and following through.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. How can listeners reach you, David, if they'd like to reach out?
Yeah, my direct number is 405-514-0340, or you can always email me at davidd@capstone-companies.com.
Great.
So just call me or email me, or like I said, I'm on the social media stuff, Facebook or LinkedIn. Really LinkedIn. Facebook's just all my 6 kids and beautiful wife, so nothing really to do with real estate. But LinkedIn, I'm on there.
Yeah. And again, everybody, it's David Dirkschneider, Dirkschneider. That's about as fast as I can do that.
Hey, that was pretty good. It's a mouthful.
Yeah. So look him up, and obviously he's a wealth of knowledge, and he's just a good guy. And I've had the pleasure of, we got to do dinner once together, and hopefully we'll get to do a deal here in the next year or so. That's what I'm hoping.
I can see that happening for sure.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So great. Well, David, thank you so much for doing this. It was fantastic. You're a rock star, and we appreciate you being on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. Let me know if I can help in any way.
Yep, you betcha. And listeners, thank you for listening. As always, thanks for being a valued listener. If you are feeling moved, go to Apple Podcasts, leave a review, and make it as good as you possibly can. No, I'm kidding. Make it honest, and we love hearing from you at any level. So thank you again, listeners, and thank you again, David.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to The Apartment Guys with Tate Seamer. Tate and friends are grateful to have you as a loyal listener. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, rate, review, and share with friends on your Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Also, check out Tate's YouTube channel for videos of many of these episodes and more. Until next time, take massive action steps and rock on.